Thank you very much. What I'm going to start by talking about is a bit of news this week about the North Korean Gulag. We were at a conference, Shin and Henry and I, earlier in Washington a couple days ago. And there's some new information about the camp. And let me share that with you and give you sort of the big picture of what the Gulag is. Right now, according to the most recent estimates of NGOs in Seoul, the North Korean government, the South Korean government, I mean to say, and the US government, there are 5 camps in existence right now with about between 135 and 150,000 people. That's the most current estimate. What's also interesting is that one of these camps, Camp 15, Yadok, has for many years been a retraining area where people could go to this camp for between 2 and 10 years, and if they did not starve to death or were not beaten to death or worked to death, they could be released. And so most of what we know about the camps first came from those who'd been to that camp and then got out of North Korea and found their way to South Korea. But since 2009, no one has gotten out of Camp 15. And that is an interesting, and no one knows why, but that is the case. Also, we learned this week that based on estimates by the NK database, the North Korea database, which is a Seoul-based human rights group, and they have now interviewed 10,000 defectors from North Korea, including all of those known to have been in the camps who are willing to talk. About half of the people in the camps are simply relatives of those who were perceived to have committed some sort of crime, perceived or imagined wrongdoing or wrong thinking by, say, the dad in the family. But half of the people in these camps are either the children of this father or the parents of this father. That's the kind of system that we're talking about. So all of that is new information. I did not know these details until this week. It updates and clarifies some information. Let me talk now about what Americans seem to know about these camps. This book has been out for a couple weeks now, and to our great delight, it's selling, and which means that radio stations want to talk to me. And so I've done rounds of interviews now with small, medium-sized radio stations from virtually every part of the United States. And the tenor of the questions is very interesting, and for me, and I think for Mr. Shin, it's heartbreaking. And what I think I can say is that most Americans don't know anything about these camps. They don't know that they exist. They don't know what goes on inside of them. And they are ignorant of information that's been available, if they'd sought it out, for almost 10 years now. And it's very discouraging. And I think that will change maybe a bit because of this book. And that's why Mr. Shin went through the misery of talking to me for 2 years so that we could do this book. But the good news is that when they do hear the story, based on the reaction that we've gotten in the past 2 weeks, when they do hear what Mr. Shin endured in his 23 years in the camp, they are riveted, and they're telling their friends about it. And we hope that they'll tell enough of their friends that it will become part of the understanding of North Korea. Tonight, North Korea could launch a missile. In a few days, it could explode another nuclear device. Those 2 elements are what Americans know about North Korea, along with a rather cartoonish image of the leadership. Kim Jong-il's big glasses and puffy hair and funny suits, and his taste for Hennessy brandy. But the darker truth about this totalitarian state, one that we were so, as a nation, so shocked to learn about after World War II, or were so politically engaged in during the existence of the Soviet Gulag, people just don't know. They're not paying attention, which is pretty depressing to me. But let me transition to what's new with the story of Shin Dong-hyuk, what he tells us about the camps that we did not know before. And once I go through these 3 points, I'm gonna read a couple passages from the book that will try to explain why we did the book. But first of all, what Shin's story tells us that we didn't know before is that children are bred in the camps to be slaves, to be farm animals, and to be worked to death. His parents were chosen by guards for marriage, and he is that marriage produced him and his brother, and their expected life trajectory was to learn almost nothing except how to read and write at a rudimentary level, and then be worked to death in the camp while living on semi-starvation food rations of corn, cabbage soup, and a bit of salt. And that is the meal that he ate 3 times a day for 23 years until he escaped. The existence of these reward marriages, and that children born in the camp are routinely taught to betray their parents and betray everybody in the hopes that they might get more food, that's new with the story that Mr. Shin tells. And also the degree to which people born in the camps are isolated from the rest of the world. Shin did not know really that there was a world outside the camp, except in the most minimal details. He did not know the world was round. He did not know about the existence of China or South Korea or the United States or about anything, because the less he knew, the easier he was to manage, and along with the other children that he grew up with. We also know that children in the camp are tortured, even as children, if they violate the rules of the camp. Shin was tortured. And finally, we know that the fences around the camps are lethal, that if you touch them, you die. And these have been seen. There are now very high-resolution images of the camps, and the fence have been seen, but we now know that they are carry lethal voltage. And finally, one of the things that Shin's story tells us about North Korea, once he got out of the camp, he escaped January 2nd, 2005, and spent 30 days walking, riding a truck, riding a train, and then walking again to get out of North Korea. It's possible, once you get out of the camp, to move into a slipstream of traders, of people who are moving food and other goods from China, and are sort of the informal economy of North Korea now is large enough that a young man who finds a military uniform and keeps his mouth shut and his ears open can walk out of North Korea. He can walk through a totalitarian state, not knowing which way China might be, which is in fact what he did. What we tried to do in this book was to work with the power of his story to hook Americans, particularly, who are ignorant about the existence of the camp. Give them an irresistible human story that once they hear it and once they know Shin's story, they can never forget him and never think of North Korea without thinking of the existence of these camps and how a hideous cruelty with the concentration camps is one of the fundamental tools, one of the fundamental reasons that North Korea has survived so much longer as a totalitarian state than any other system. I'm just going to read two quick pieces, and then Shin will come and talk to you for a minute. In stories of concentration camp survival, there is a conventional narrative arc. Security forces steal the protagonist away from a loving family and a comfortable home. To survive, he abandons moral principles, suppresses feelings for others, and ceases to be a civilized human being. In perhaps the most celebrated of these stories, Night, by Nobel Prize winner Elie Wiesel, the 13-year-old narrator explains his torment with an account of the normal life that existed before he and his family were packed aboard trains bound for Nazi death camp. Wiesel grew up in a religious Jewish family. His father owned a store. His grandfather was always around to pray with him and teach him. But after the boy's entire family perished in the camps, Wiesel was left alone. He writes, alone, terribly alone, in a world without God, without man, without love or mercy. Shin's story of survival is different than all these other survivors of the other concentration camps that have existed. His mother beat him, and he viewed her as a competitor for food. His father, who was allowed by guards to sleep with his mother just 5 nights a year, ignored him. His brother was a stranger. Children in the camp were untrustworthy and abusive. Before he learned anything else, Shin learned to survive by snitching on all of them. Love and mercy and family were words without meaning. God did not disappear or die. Shin had never heard of him. In a preface to Night, Wiesel wrote about an adolescent's knowledge of death and evil, and how it should be limited to what one discovers in literature. In Camp 14, Shin did not know literature existed. He saw only one book in the camp, a Korean grammar, in the hands of a teacher who wore a guard's uniform, carried a revolver on his hip, and beat one of his primary school classmates to death with a chalkboard pointer. Unlike those who have survived a concentration camp, Shin had not been torn away from a civilized existence and forced to descend into hell. He was born and raised there. He accepted its values. He called it home. When he was 23, Shin had the enormous good fortune of meeting someone who was a newcomer to the camp, a man named Park. Park had been educated in Pyongyang, in the former Soviet Union. He had traveled around, and he knew that of the existence of everything that Shin didn't know about. And Shin was assigned to be his teacher, to teach him how to fix sewing machines in a uniform factory inside Camp 14. Shin was also supposed to snitch on him, to find out what Mr. Park thought about the leadership in Pyongyang and report back. But for the first time in his life, Shin did not do that. He began to listen to Mr. Park and trust him. And he also became inspired by Mr. Park's story about eating once you got out of Camp 14 and got out of North Korea. He was particularly interested in grilled meat if he could get to China. They decided to escape together. It was Mr. Shin's idea. And they tried to get out together. Mr. Park did not make it. Mr. Park died on that electric fence, and Shin crawled over his body and got out. 2 days later, or a day later actually, Shin was in a small town just a few miles from Camp 14. He had found an old military uniform changed out of his prison clothes, and no one seemed to be after him. Now, he told me this story 2 or 3 times before I understood how important that first day was outside the camp. I asked him, in my ignorance, I said, wasn't it exciting to go to China and see the big buildings and the cars and all this stuff? And wasn't it fun to come to South Korea or even come to the great United States and see how civilized we are? And he said, oh, it was okay. But what really was to him thrilling, shocking, was that first day of freedom. And I'll just read a short section on that. Shin scavenged around the outskirts of Bukchang, the town that he'd stumbled into, eating whatever he could find on the ground or in garbage heaps. He had no idea what to do or where to go. He had no idea where China might be. People in the street seemed to ignore him. His legs hurt, and he was hungry and cold. His legs had been severely burned by the electric fence that he'd crawled over. It caught the lower shins of his legs, and he was suffering from, and they were bleeding. His legs hurt, and he was hungry and cold, yet he was exhilarated. He felt like an alien fallen to earth. In the months and years ahead, Shin would discover all things modern: streaming video, blogs, and international air travel. Therapists and career counselors would advise him. Preachers would show him how to pray to Jesus Christ. Friends would teach him how to brush his teeth, use a debit card, and fool around with a smartphone. From obsessive reading online, the politics, history, and geography of the 2 Koreas, China, Southeast Asia, Europe, and the United States, would all become familiar. None of this, though, did more to change his understanding of how the world works and how human beings interact with each other than his first days outside the camp. It shocked him to see North Koreans going about their daily lives without having to take orders from guards. When they had the temerity to laugh together in the streets or wear brightly colored clothes, which he'd never seen before, or haggle over prices in an open-air market, he expected armed men to step in, knock heads, and stop the nonsense. The word Shin uses again and again to describe those first days is shock. It was not meaningful to him that North Korea in the dead of winter is ugly, dirty, and dark, or that it is poorer than Sudan, or that taken as a whole, it is viewed by human rights groups as the world's largest prison. His context, his unique context, had been 23 years in an open-air cage run by men who hanged his mother, shot his brother, crippled his father, murdered pregnant women, beat children to death, taught him to betray his family, and tortured him over a fire. He felt wonderfully free, and as best as he could determine, no one was looking for him. So this is why I wrote this book, because I heard his story, and I was under the hope. I actually beginning to believe now that Americans are going to pay attention to this story, and this ignorance of the camps will dissipate. Shin will now talk to you a bit, and then we'll sit together and answer questions. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's good evening. 오늘 저를 또 이 자리에 설 수 있게 또 해주신 여러분들께 진심으로 감사를 드립니다.
I would like to thank everyone for allowing me to stand here before you tonight.
어제도 마찬가지로 오늘 또 역시 또 Escape from Camp 14이라는 책을 또 책에 대해서 또 여러분들이 관심을 가지고 계시고 또 이 블레인 하든이나 또 저를 통해서 거기에 대한 이야기를 또 듣기 위해서 또 여러분들이 와주셨잖아요.
And like yesterday's event that we had in DC, also here tonight, a lot of you have showed up with an interest in Mr. Hardin's book, Escape from Camp 14.
여러분들은 저 책을 보시면서 뭐 눈물을 흘릴 분들도 계실 거고
All of you, as you read this book, some of you may cry.
끔찍하다고 생각하시는 분들도 계실 거고
Some of you may think that it's a frightening story.
또 설마 저런 일이 일어나겠냐 믿지 못하시는 분들도 계실 겁니다.
Perhaps there will be some of you who will say, how can such a thing happen, and might not believe what you are reading.
제가 이제 미국의 워싱턴 DC에 올 때마다 꼭 한번 가보는 것이 하나 있거든요.
There is one place that I always visit whenever I go to Washington, D.C.,
바로 홀로코스트 뮤지엄에 저희가 자주 갑니다.
and that is the Holocaust Museum.
거기 왜 가냐면은 제가 홀로코스트에 가서 꼭 돌아보는 게 하나 있거든요.
I go there because there is one exhibit or one area that I always visit when I go to the Holocaust Museum.
그 옛날 나치 수용소에서 그 사람들이 신었던 신발,
There is a section in the museum that showcases shoes worn by former inmates of the Nazi prison camp, the concentration camps,
나치 수용소에서 그 사람들이 입었던 옷,
and the clothes worn by the former inmates, the Nazi concentration camps.
그리고 보는 것이 연합군이 그때의 나치 수용소 갔을 때의 그 영상으로 담은 그 참상을 봅니다.
And the footage shot by the Allied forces when they freed the Nazi prison camps.
그 많은 동영상 중에 어떤 게 있냐면은 연합군이 그 나치 수용소를 점령하고 수많은 유대인들이 시체를 불도저로 밀어서 파묻는 장면이 나오거든요.
And from the footage, one that really stands out and that I see is footage of where the Allied forces use a bulldozer to move and bury the bodies of the Jewish inmates who were killed, who died in the prison camps.
여러분들도 이걸 다 보셨을 거라고 저는 생각을 하고 있습니다.
I believe that many of you have seen this footage as well.
저는 이 영상을 보면서 북한의 정치범 수용소의 앞날을 상상을 합니다.
For me, as I see this footage, I see the future of what will happen in the North Korean political prison camps.
우리는 꼭 이런 끔찍한 상황이 일어났을 때만 관심을 가져야 되는 것 같아요.
It seems like we only show interest only when frightening things like this happen.
나치 수용소에 끔찍한 일이 일어났을 때에 우리는 가슴 아파했고 눈물을 흘렸거든요.
When the atrocities of the Nazi prison camps happened, we cried and we were shocked at what we had seen.
그리고 캄보디아에서 수백만 명이 죽었을 때에 무리 죽음을 학살을 했을 때에 우리는 그 학살이 일어나고 나서 그 전범자를 잡아서 지금 재판한다고 하고 있습니다.
And in Cambodia, after the atrocities happened there, we went after the ones who were guilty and put them on trial.
수단 다르푸르 사태에도 수십만 명이 죽었을 때도 다 죽고 나서 우리는 관심을 가졌고요.
Even in Sudan, in the Darfur, what's happening there, even only after hundreds of thousands had died, we showed interest in that issue.
이 사람들이 죽기 전에 해결할 수 있는 방법이 없었습니까, 우리가?
Wasn't there any solution to help them before these people died?
이 사람들이 죽기 전에 우리가 그 사람들을 구출하고 이 사람들이 죽고 나서 아무리 전범 재판에 해부돼서 그 전범자를 재판한다고 해서 무슨 소용이 있겠어요?
Before these people died, couldn't we have helped them? And what would have been the use to go after the people that were guilty in killing these people if these people had already been killed?
지금 이미 전에 벌써 90년도 중반, 90년도 후반에 벌써 북한에서는 수백만 명이 굶어 죽었습니다.
Beginning the mid to early to mid 90s, hundreds of thousands of North Koreans died in the starvation.
많은 사람들이 눈 번이 뜨고도 음식 하나도 먹지 못하고 그냥 고스란히 앉아서 수십만 명, 수백만 명 굶어 죽었거든요.
Many people literally just died sitting down as they were because of starvation and through hunger.
이렇게 수백만 명이 굶어 죽은 것도 국제사회는 잘 알고 있습니다.
The international community knows very well what happened in North Korea with the starvation and the hunger, the people that died as a result.
이 사람들이 죽고 나서도 그 죽음이 끝난 게 아니거든요.
even after these people died, the death did not stop there.
지금 북한에는 정치범 수용소가 비공식적으로 6개 수용소에 20만 명이 갇혀 있다고 그래요.
It is known that in the North Korean political prison camp system, within 6 camps, there are about 200,000 inmates incarcerated in these camps.
한국 정부가 공식적으로 발표를 한 것에 의하면은 5개 수용소에 15만 4천 명의 정치범 죄수들이 잡혀 있다고 이렇게 발표를 했습니다.
According to the South Korean government, they say that there are 5 camps and close to 150,000 inmates incarcerated in these camps.
그러면은 제가 처음에 말씀드렸던 이 여러 가지 우리가 봐왔던 끔찍한 학살 그 만행들이 지나간 일이라고 여러분들은 생각하고 계십니까?
So, do you think that the atrocities that I mentioned previously in my talk, these are things that happened in the past?
그냥 제가 여러분들한테 하는 게 있습니다. 여러분, 지금까지 우리가 봐왔던 끔찍한 사건들을 끝나고 나서 관심을 가져주시 마시고 이런 끔찍한 사건이 일어나기 전에 우리 국제사회가 힘을 합쳐서 한번 막아보면 어떨까 하고 저는 여러분들께 말씀드립니다.
There's one thing that I would like to beseech all of you with, and that is, don't show interest in this after the fact, after people die, but as it happens right now, join forces with the international community and get involved right now to help with what is going on right now.
제가 살던 정치범 수용소에도 수만 명의 사람들이 죄수들이 갇혀 있어요.
다시 한번.
제가 살던 정치범 수용소에도 수만 명의 사람들이 갇혀 살고 있거든요.
In the prison camp that I was in, there were tens of thousands of inmates in that prison camp.
여러분들은 저 책을 보시면서 그냥 단지 저나 저희 가족에 대한 스토리를만을 기억해 주지 마시고
All of you, as you read this book, please don't just read it and think of a book that is about myself or my family.
설사 혹시라도 북한에 무슨 일이 일어났을 때에 그 사람들을 학살할 수 있는 가능성이 굉장히 크거든요.
Because perhaps if something were to happen, the fact that those people can be all killed overnight is a great possibility.
지금도 북한에서는 수많은 사람들이 먹을 게 없어서 굶어 죽고 있는데 북한은 8억 달러라는 큰 돈을 들여서 미사일을 날린다고 합니다.
Right now, there are scores of people right now in North Korea who are dying from hunger and starvation, yet the regime is spending millions in this so-called missile launch.
이런 북한 독재자가 그 수십만 명의 북한에 있는 정치범 죄수들을 죽이지 않을 수 있다는 생각하는 분들이 계십니까?
So, is there anyone here that would think that the North Korean dictator, the regime, wouldn't kill those inmates that are in the prison camps in the country?
북한의 독재자들은 그 수십만 명의 정치범 죄수들을 하룻밤에 죽일 수 있는 능력이 충분히 있다고 저는 생각을 합니다.
Because I believe that the North Korean dictators and the regime have the full capability and the ability to kill the hundreds of thousands of inmates in these prison camps overnight.
그 학살이 오늘 밤이 됐든 1년 후가 됐든 10년 후가 됐든 이들이 죽었을 때에 여러분들은 저 책을 보시고 저를 기억해 주시는 게 아니라 그 정치범 수용소에서 살면서 희생된 그 사람들을 기억해 주십시오.
And should that genocide, that killing happen tonight, a year or 10 years later, as you read this book, please don't just remember me, but remember those people that are still in prison camps who are incarcerated there.
우리가 모르고 여러분들이 모르고 있는 저 머나먼 나라, 조그만 나라에서 이렇게 참혹한 일이 일어났구나. 이렇게 살다가 죽은 사람들도 있구나 하고 기억해 주십시오.
Please remember that in the small country, far ways off, that there are people who will die this tragic death. Please remember them.
지금 북한에서 살고 있는 국민들, 또 정치범 수용소에서 살고 있는 죄수들은 북한 독재자의 공포, 북한 독재자의 탄압 때문에 자기들이 가져야 할 자유를 찾기 위해서 싸울 수 있는 능력이 없습니다.
Right now, the North Korean people and the inmates that are incarcerated in the political prison camps, because of the fear and the oppression used by the regime, they have no freedom. They have no power to find freedom on their own.
그래서 여러분들께 부탁을 하는 겁니다. 제발 그들을 도와달라고.
So that's why I ask all of you here tonight, please help them.
무리 죽음 당하면서도 아무것도 할 수 없는 아무것도 싸울 능력이 없는 그들을 위해서 북한 정권에다가 말을 좀 해달라고 부탁드립니다.
Please fight for those who cannot even fight back when they die needless deaths. Please fight back and please put pressure on the North Korean regime.
북한 정치범 수용소에서 저랑 같이 일하던 동료들, 저랑 같이 생활하던 친구들은 또 북한 전체에 살고 있는 북한 국민들 그들은 딱 한 가지 잘하는 게 있어요.
There's one thing that the North Korean people and also the inmates in the prison camps, my friends, former comrades, that do really well. There's one thing that they do really well.
바로 죽는 거 하나는 너무나도 잘 합니다. 그들이.
That is, they die really well.
그냥 김일성이 역했다고, 김정일이 역했다고 해서 잡아가서 죽이면은 그게 좀 옳은 거라고 생각하고 있는 게 북한 사람들입니다.
Just because you would defame the name of Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il, they will be dragged away and killed. And people thinking that is normal. That is what the reality of North Korea is.
그래서 여교와에 계시는 여러분들이 그들을 위해서 북한 정권, 독재자 정권에게 목소리를 좀 내주십시오.
So please, I ask all of you here tonight, please lift up your voice and be a voice for those people against the North Korean regime.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
So this is on. So questions? Yes, please.
Yes, I what we've heard already from you. Excuse me. Hi, my name is Marek. I'm a member of Korea Society. We've heard already that there was Mr. Park, which was inspiration behind it, but I would be a little more interested in what really drove Mr. Shin with the idea to get out.
일단 북한에 제가 살던 정치범 수용소는 물론이고 북한이 있는 모든 정치범 수용소에서는 이제 사람이 잡혀 들어가게 되면 거기서 그냥 늙어 죽을 때까지 살아야 된다 하고 살아야 되는 그런 것이거든요.
Not only in the prison camp where I was incarcerated, but throughout all the political prison camps in North Korea, it is common knowledge that once you are sent there, you will not come out alive. You will basically die of old age in the camps.
그래서 그 안에서는 우리가 배울 수 있고 우리가 벌 수 있고 우리가 마음대로 먹을 수 있는 게 아무것도 없습니다.
So within the camps, there's nothing that we can learn or eat or do anything freely.
교육조차도 받을 수가 없거든요. 그 안에서는.
And we cannot receive any education either inside the camps.
저도 마찬가지로 그 안에서 수십 년 동안 살면서 제가 할 수 있는 일은 그냥 늙어 죽을 때까지 그냥 부모들이 죄를 지었다고 해서 그 죄를 대신 갚아주는 일만 해야 되는 거 외에는 제가 아는 게 아무것도 없었어요.
So for me, the only thing that I can do was basically pay for the crime of my parents, and that's what that's the only knowledge I had for my existence in the camps.
그리고 제가 밟고 있는 그 땅 전체가 다 이 죄수하고 간수로만 구분되는 줄만 알고 생각하고 있었고요.
And the world that I knew was just the world that existed of the prison guards and the prison inmates.
하지만 이제 2004년에 이제 제가 일하던 공장에 이제 외부에서 어떤 사람이 들어와서 저랑 같이 일하게 되는 그런 기회가 있었거든요.
However, in 2004, there was an opportunity for me to work alongside with another inmate who had lived in the outside world and who had been sent to the camp.
그래서 그분을 통해서 난생 처음 이제 수용소 외에 바깥 사회에 대한 얘기를 들어봤던 거죠.
So through him, I was able to hear stories of the outside world.
하지만 그분이 얘기하는 이 바깥 사회에 대해서 믿을 수가 없었어요. 보지 못했고 듣지도 못했던 그런 얘기들이니까.
However, I could not believe one word that this person had told me of the outside world because I had not seen or heard of anything of the outside world.
하지만 몇 개월 동안 그런 얘기를 듣다 보면은 이제 그게 그분이 얘기한 것에 대해서 이제 머릿속에 상상을 할 수가 있었던 거죠.
However, after many months of hearing him telling me the stories of the outside world, I began to imagine and think about the things that he was telling me in my own mind.
그래서 그분이 얘기했던 중에서 제 마음을 가장 울렸던 거는 이 수용소 철조망만 넘어가면은 그 수용소 철조망 밖에 사는 사람들은 우리처럼 이렇게 살지 않는다.
And the one thing that moved me the most that he had told me was that once we got out of the camp, once we passed through the electrified fence, there were people that did not live like us, that did not have to live like us inmates in the prison camp.
수용소 밖에 있는 사람들은 자기가 입고 싶은 옷을 입고 자기가 입고 싶은 옷을 입고 자기가 먹고 싶은 음식을 먹고 머리 빡빡 깎지 않아도 되고 경찰이 지나가면 인사하지 않아도 된다. 이런 얘기가 저한테는 굉장히 큰 충격이었죠.
to me, the greatest shock was to hear that outside the camp, there were people who could wear whatever they wanted to wear. They could eat freely. They didn't have to shave their heads. And there were people who did not have to bow to the prison officials.
아마 이런 상상, 제가 겪어보지 못했지만 이런 얘기를 들으면 여러분들은 아마 여러분들도 마찬가지로 머릿속에서 상상을 할 거라고 저는 생각을 하고 있습니다.
I think that if you were in the same situation, that you would probably think the same thing as well.
이런 상상을 하기 시작하니까 저는 더 이상 수용소에서 사는 것 자체가 고통이라는 걸 느끼기 시작했던 거죠.
And as I began to imagine more and more and think about more and more of the outside world, I came to the realization that I could not stay in the camps any longer.
이런 얘기 듣기 전에는 수용소 안에서 사는 게 고통인지 전혀 느끼질 못했었어요.
Before I had heard these stories, I did not know that living in the camp was a cruel was going through a cruel suffering.
수용소 안에서 살아야 되는 게 우리의 운명이라고 생각을 했던 거죠.
I believe that it was our destiny to be living inside the prison camp.
하지만 그분의 말씀을 듣고 그냥 나도 수용소 밖에만 나가면은 이렇게 죄수로서 살지 않아도 되겠구나.
However, after hearing him tell me about the outside world, I realized, even if I were to go outside of this camp, I could live like those people that he had talked to me about.
그래서 그때 제가 생각했던 게 내일 당장 총에 맞아 죽어도 오늘 단 하루만이라도 이 사람이 살았던 생활, 먹고 싶은 음식을 먹고 입고 싶은 옷을 입고 한번 놀아보고 싶다 해가지고 도망칠 생각을 했던 거예요.
So I thought about escaping, thinking that even if I were to get shot the next day, I wanted to escape and just experience very briefly the ability to eat freely, wear freely, and do whatever I want and live in freedom.
물론 도망칠 때 총에 맞아 죽을 수도 있고 아니면 나가다 잡히면은 정말 상상하기 힘든 고통, 상상하기 힘든 고문을 받을 수가 있습니다.
Of course, in my attempt to escape, I can get shot and get killed, or if I were to be caught, I would have suffered unimaginable and unspeakable torture and suffering.
하지만 북한의 독재자들은 인간의 감정을 강압적으로 이렇게 없애려고 하면 없어지는 줄 알고 착각을 하는 것 같아요.
However, I believe that the North Korean dictators are under the false impression that they can forcefully suppress the people and the people's emotions.
비록 그 억압 속에서 고통 속에서 자기 감정을 표출하지 못하고 그 숨겨져 있던 감정이 손톱만큼의 그 정보, 손톱만큼의 그 소식으로도 내 숨겨졌던 감정이 살아나는 거죠.
However, even under that oppression, even just a little bit of information, a fingernail's worth of information of the outside world that was given to me, that's what awakened that emotion in me.
그래서 2005년 1월 2일 날 산에 이제 일하러 갔던 기회에 그냥 도망쳤어요. 그냥.
So on January 2nd, 2005, while we were sent to work in the mountainside, that's when I made the attempt to escape, and I just escaped.
물론 아쉽게 이제 두 명서 탈출을 시도하면서 한 분은 이제 철조망에 걸리고 나만 성공하게 됐지만.
Of course, unfortunately, there were two of us. The other person, unfortunately, got stuck in the fence and died, and could not make it. And I escaped successfully, though.
북한에 살고 있는 많은 정치범 죄수들도 나처럼 이렇게 나는 기적적으로 이렇게 도망쳐서 살아나긴 했지만은 이렇게 조그마한 정보라도 알 수 있는 그 구멍이 있다고 하게 되면은 그들도 나처럼 탈출하려고 하는 그런 생각을 많이 하리라고 저는 생각을 합니다.
And I believe that other prison inmates in North Korea, just like me, I escaped miraculously. But if they were given a small glimmer of hope, I believe that they too would want to escape as well.
답변이 많이 부족하지만 다음 기회에 또 자세하게 말씀드릴 수 있는 기회 있으면 말씀드리겠습니다.
And I don't know if that answer suffices, but should there be another opportunity for me to speak on that, I will give a better answer, hopefully.
I'm a little overwhelmed by all this information. My name is Hee-sun. I'm a member of the society. I guess I wanted to ask the obvious personal safety question. Blaine, as a journalist, can you just talk about your decision to basically, out and kind of use his full name? And maybe Shin can talk about his decision to basically come out publicly with his story to essentially become a public figure. Thank you.
Okay. Shin was a public figure when I first met him in December of 2008. And he has been asked often about the question of risk, whether North Korea would go after him. I think I may have asked him that when I first spoke to him in December. And and he was not concerned about that. But I think he has some. Speak to that.
물론 뭐 처음에 이제 한국에 와서 이제 숨어 지내기도 했었고 또 뭐 여러 가지 이런 물론 직접적으로 이렇게 뭐 기업받거나 그런 적은 없지만은 내 자신이 이제 좀 이렇게 무서워해서 좀 피해 다녔던 적은 있습니다.
When I first came to South Korea, I never really felt any danger of personal harm country, but I sort of lived in hiding when I came to South Korea.
하지만 저는 한국이나 미국에 와서 여러분들을 통해서 많은 것을 배우고 있거든요.
However, when I come to the U.S. or even in South Korea, I learn a lot from meeting people like you here tonight.
대한민국에 살고 있는 대한민국 국민이나 또 여기 앉아 계시는 여러분들도 지금 이렇게 생활하고 있는 거에 대해서 그냥 하늘에서 뚝 떨어졌기 때문에 우리가 이렇게 풍족한 생활을 하고 있다고 생각하시는 분이 계세요?
Are there anyone among you here tonight, not only here but also among the South Korean people in South Korea, that the comfortable life that we live, is this something that just dropped from the sky?
내가 만약 그런 위협에 무서워서 숨거나 그게 무서워서 할 말을 못 한다고 하게 되면은 제가 할 수 있는 일은 아무것도 없습니다.
So if I were to live in fear of harm and live in hiding, then there's nothing that I can do in my life right now.
하지만 다행인지 어땠는지 모르겠지만 아직까지는 그런 위협 받아본 적이 없거든.
However, fortunately, I've never been threatened with any harm that would come to me personally.
하지만 저는 그걸 무서워하지는 않을 겁니다.
However, I don't think I would fear that.
Giusetta Capriati, Foreign Policy Association. Mr. Harden, thank you for writing this book that has brought light over this horrifying, terrible problem. But why do you only blame Americans for not knowing and not doing anything about this? What about other Asian countries? What about Europe? I'm European and I never heard about this before. I think that the entire civilized world should get up and do something about this horrible situation.
Well, that's a good point. I guess we're in America. I'm an American, and the book was written with Americans in mind. However, it turns out that the world is interested, and the book has now been sold and being printed, I think, in 13 languages. The only language groups that we haven't done are Spanish, Italian, and oddly enough, Korean. But we think that soon the book will be printed in Korea as well. So it's true that world knowledge of the details of these camps is pretty sketchy, and politicians in Europe have not paid a whole lot of attention to it. And I think that the publishers in these countries realize that and see an opportunity to reach people with Shin's amazing story.
I have a question for Mr. Shin. Should I ask in Korean or ask in English?
That would be more efficient.
예, 잘 아시겠지만은 그 대한민국에서는 I'll ask in English. Okay, that'll be. Okay.
Oh, right.
As you know, in South Korea, there's a very vocal left. They call themselves progressives. The left in Korea, Korean left, has basically turned their backs on North Korean human rights situation. All they care about is reconciliation with North Korea. They talk about human rights in South Korea, Afghanistan, and Iraq, but they never talk about North Korea. And a lot of the young generation in South Korea are swayed by the Korean left, and they're very, their pro-North Korean stance is very popular among young Koreans. So I was wondering how you felt when you met young South Koreans who know nothing about what's going on in North Korean concentration camps, but they would heap praise on the Kim regimes and, on the dictatorship. Thank you.
저도 이제 사실 이제 한국 정치권이나 여러 가지 제가 이 공개적인 자리에서 이렇게 그거 비판할 수 있는 그거 좀 자리가 적절한지는 모르겠지만은 그 제 솔직한 심정은 저도 거기에 대한 좀 섭섭한 마음은 있긴 합니다.
I don't know if it's a proper place for me to criticize the politics of South Korea, but I too am very disappointed with some of these people in South Korea that tend to have these views.
하지만 저는 한국에 있는 그들에게 그들이 생각하고 있는 북한에 대해서 정말로 잘못 생각하고 있다고 정말 얘기해주고 싶습니다.
However, I would like to tell those people who have a skewed or misinformed view of North Korea that they are wrong and that I would like to tell them the correct information.
그래서 다행스러운 게 지금 최근에 이제 대한민국의 젊은이들 속에서 이제 굉장히 북한에 대해서 다시 생각하게 되고 북한 인권에 대해서 관심을 가지는 청년들이 굉장히 많이 나오고 있다는 겁니다.
However, what is fortunate is that right now, a lot of young South Koreans have taken a great interest and care in the North Korean human rights issue and are getting involved with this issue.
예를 들어서 제가 지금 시작하고 있는 그 인터넷 방송에 거의 그 스텝이 한 5명 되는데 다 대한민국 청년들이거든요. 25살, 20대 중반의 청년들입니다.
For example, the new venture that I started, the online internet broadcast program, Inside NK, there are 5 staff members, and they are all South Korean students, young South Korean students in their mid-20s.
그래서 제가 좀 사실 그 사람들이 뭐 소위 뭐 진보라고 하는 그 대한민국의 이제 정치권이나 또 이제 대한민국 국민들이 북한에 대해서 정말 일방적으로 추종하고 북한에 대해서 비호하고 있는 것에 대한 책임도 저희 북한에서 탈북한 우리 탈북자들한테도 있지 않나 하는 생각을 하고 있고요.
So I believe, in a sense, that the liberals or the progressive-leaning politicians, for them to have their views regarding North Korea, perhaps maybe even the defectors ourselves are partly to blame for that.
그래서 제가 이렇게 말씀드린 이유는 우리가 좀 더 적극적으로 사람들 앞에 나서서 대한민국 국민들, 그게 진보든 그게 보수든 그 사람들 앞에서 우리가 진심을 다해서 마음을 다해서 북한에 대해서 설명한다고 하게 되면 그 사람들도 충분히 이해할 수 있으리라고 저는 생각을 하고 있습니다.
So I believe if us defectors, if we were to actively and proactively speak out on this issue, whether they are right or left, I believe that the situation can be improved.
그래서 저희가 처음 이제 시작한 인터넷 방송을 통해서 남한의 국민들, 북한에 대해서 전혀 모르는 국민들을 대상으로 해서 북한에서 오신 분들이 직접 1시간 반 동안 자기 스토리, 북한에 대한 생활상, 또 한국에서 어떻게 살았고 중국에서 어떻게 살았고 하는 내용들을 마음을 다해서 감동을 다해서 이렇게 말씀해 주시거든요.
So through this internet online broadcast program, Inside NK, our target audience is the South Korean citizens who may not know anything about the situation, the reality in North Korea. So, for example, we would bring North Korean defectors as guests to our program, and we would give them an hour and 30 minutes for them to talk about their life in North Korea, their escape to China, and their life in China, and also their life in South Korea as well.
대한민국 국민들도 인권을 너무나도 소중하게 생각하시는 분들이기 때문에 우리가 조금 더 열심히 노력한다고 하게 되면은 그 대한민국 국민들도 충분히 우리의 생각을 같이 공유할 수 있으리라고 저는 생각을 합니다.
And I believe that the South Korean citizens really value human rights, and if we work hard together, we can work together to make them pay attention and care about the North Korean human rights situation as well.
물론 뭐 진짜 그냥 어떻게 우리가 열심히 해도 안 되는 분들도 계시겠지만은 뭐 그분들은 나름대로 무슨 자기네가 추구하고 있는 무슨 이런 여러 가지 이념이나 생각이 있기 때문에 뭐 안 될 거라고 뭐 그렇게 생각하고 있고요. 거기에 대해서 또 뭐 그렇게 신경 쓰진 않습니다.
And of course, there are some in South Korea, no matter how hard we try, whether through ideology or through other means, they might not be able to change their thinking. But regarding those people, I really try not to worry too much about those people.
오히려 더 대한민국의 운명을 걱정해주는 사람, 걱정하고 그것을 심각하게 받아들이는 사람들이 더 많기 때문에 예.
Because in a way, there are more people that actually care about South Korea than those people who may have a different view about North Korea. So in that sense, I do not worry about that situation.
그리고 뭐 마지막으로 이게 그냥 코미디처럼 말씀드리는 건데 그냥 진짜로 북한이 좋다고 하게 되면은 그냥 그 사람들은 북한에 가서 살아야 되지 않을까 생각을 하고 있습니다.
And lastly, if I may add a bit of a commentary, for those people that really praise and like North Korea, they should just go live in North Korea.
정말 그 사람들이 따르고 싶은 사람이 있다고 하게 되면은 그쪽 가서 살아야지 굳이 자기네하고 이념이 틀린 대한민국에서 살면서 그 얘기할 필요는 없다고 저는 생각합니다.
Because if they really follow a particular leader or ideology, they should go to that country that has that leader or ideology. Why are they staying in a country that has an ideology or a system contrary to what they praise and what they believe?
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Okay.
Ryan Lee, Society member here. About a year ago, I had a chance to speak with another former defector, Mr. Kang Cheol-hwan, who's the author of The Aquariums of Pyongyang. He said that the single most effective means to help weaken the regime was to help as many defectors or as many North Koreans escape the country as possible. And this was a shock to me because I had taken part in humanitarian missions trips to help with clinics and whatnot. So that changed my view dramatically. What's your assessment of the single most practical way that American professionals can either help to weaken the regime? Do you discourage people like me from going in and helping clinics? Should we just look elsewhere? What are your general thoughts?
Is that question for me or for Mr. Shin? Okay. My thoughts are that the single most effective things that Americans can do is to understand what's going on and demand that their political leaders, congressmen, their president, make human rights a co-equal issue in any discussions, diplomatic discussions, economic discussions with North Korea. Those conversations are few and far between these days, but with China, diplomatic and economic talks with China are going on 24 hours a day. And if human rights in North Korea, the existence of these camps became an obstacle for the Chinese in everything they're trying to do, I think that would help. I'm not sure it would change things overnight, but I think that it would be a new complication for China in dealing with the world that it desperately needs to achieve its goals. And I think that that's a really important thing that should happen that isn't happening now.
만약 여기 계시는 여러분들이 자기가 가지고 있는 능력을 가지고 직접 북한에 가서 여러분들이 선으로, 여러분들이 능력으로 직접 그들을 눈으로 확인하면서 도와줄 수 있다고 하게 되면 저는 그게 옳다고 생각을 합니다.
I believe that if anyone here can go to North Korea with your abilities and talents and with your own hands and with your eyes can really help the actual people, then I believe that is the right thing to do.
만약 그게 아니고 그냥 뭐 북한 정권이 일방적으로 뭘 요구한다든지 뭐 예를 들어서 식량이나 뭐 의료 물품이나 확인도 없이 그냥 일방적으로 요구하실 경우에는 저는 저를 비롯해서 많은 우리 북한 사람들이 반대를 하고 있는 거거든요.
However, if you just follow whatever the North Korean regime demands, whether it's food aid or any other program that just follows what the regime would ask of, then I believe that not only the North Korean people, but that's something that I would oppose as well.
그리고 이제 많은 지금으로서는 제 개인적인 생각이지만은 지금 북한의 많은 우리 북한 국민들은 자기들이 처지가 힘들고 자기들이 고통받고 있다는 거는 알지만은 어떻게 하면은 이거를 바꿀 수 있는지에 대해서는 전혀 모르고 있는 것 같아요.
My personal opinion is that the North Korean people, they know that their situation is dire and that they are in a bad situation, but they don't know how to improve that situation. They don't know how to make it better.
그래서 지금으로서는 북한에 어떻게 정치범 수용소는 둘째치고로 해도 북한의 내부 북한 사람들 생활 자체도 어떻게 뭐 앞날 자체가 안 보입니다. 지금으로서는.
Therefore, I think the days ahead of the North Korean people, it's really unknown what will come in the future for these citizens of North Korea.
그래서 저는 개인적으로는 우리들 스스로가 들고 일어나서 북한 자기들이 자유를 찾기 위해서 싸울 수 있는 능력이 없다고 없지는 않겠지만은 그렇게 할 능력이 지금으로서는 없기 때문에 저는 국제사회로 눈을 돌려가지고 국제사회 여러분들이 힘을 빌려서 여러분들이 한테 허설을 해서 이렇게 북한 정권을 압박한다든지 아니면 뭐 북한 정권을 압박해서 그들이 정말 조금이라도 생활이 나아질 수 있는 그런 환경을 조성해 준 방법도 있지 않을까 하는 생각을 또 하고 있고요.
And because the North Korean people do not have their own ability to bring about change for themselves, I turn to the international community for help, for the international community and all of you here tonight to pressure the North Korean regime, to pressure the North Korean government, and cause them even slightly to bring about change so that perhaps the lives of the people can be improved just a little bit.
사실 뭐 정치적으로 여러 나라들에서 정치적으로 해결할 수 있는 건 전혀 불가능하다고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 뭐 예를 들어서 미국 정부가 북한에 대해서 한마디 한다고 하게 되면은 그걸 완전 무시해 버리잖아요.
However, politically speaking, I don't think much can be done. For example, if the American government were to tell the North Korean government what to do, in many ways the North Korean government just ignores what the American government would tell them.
그래서 저는 그냥 오히려 무슨 이런 어떤 언론이나 아니면 뭐 어떤 무슨 정치 뭐 정부 뭐 어떤 나라 정부에서 이렇게 하는 것보다 여러분들이 직접 저희 말에 동의해 주시고 저희가 한 말을 이해해 주신다고 하게 되면은 여러분들이 말 한마디 북한 정권을 향해서 하는 말 한마디가 굉장히 저는 몇 배 더 큰 위력이 있다고 저는 생각을 하고 있습니다.
So rather than from the governments or even from media, if all of you here tonight, if you believe the things that I've said tonight, if just all of you speak a few words to the North Korean government, I believe that will be very powerful and more effective than anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blaine, for bringing this story to the world, and thank you, Mr. Shin, for your testimonials here tonight. We would like to present you, in the spirit of our appreciation for the Penguin Group, which has done so much to make this publication possible, as well as attend tonight, a copy of Penguin Classic Anniversary Edition of Richard Kim's The Martyred. This came out in 1964. It was a National Book Award nominee, the first by a Korean or Korean-American author in 1965. But I'd like to just call your attention to the back quote by Philip Roth, which says, "Kim's story allows for no adornment. It is written in a mood of total austerity, and yet the passion of the book is perpetually beaten up against its seemingly barren surface. I'm deeply moved." And I think that we would say, Blaine, that this is a very apt comment and one that very much describes your work, which is a story of Mr. Shin that allows for no adornment, that is written in a mood of total austerity, and yet the passion of the book is perpetually beating up against its seemingly barren surface. We all are deeply moved, and I know many of us would like to delve into that book. To that end, we do invite you to please join us out front, where Blaine and Mr. Shin will be signing the book, and do pick up a copy. Again, thank you for your time tonight. I'd also like to thank not only the Penguin Group, but Nikita Desai, to Peter, to Fran Jiang, and to all of our intern volunteers. This has been an evening that has been 8 months in the making, and so we are deeply honored, deeply moved, and salute you for your sacrifice, your contribution, and thank you for your prescriptions. We will certainly take them to heart, and we hope to see you all next Thursday for Korea and the World. Thank you. No, it is, isn't it?